Hey everyone, welcome back to AFTV. We have a 9th win in 10 Premier League games. I believe Arsenal's greatest ever start to a Premier League campaign to break down after a 1-0 win at Ellen Road. But this wasn't quite the performance that we've become used to seeing from Arsenal this season. But it's the win, and that's the important thing. We're going to break it all down. Graham, how are you?
I'm very well, mate. Nice to see you again. I thought we got away with one yesterday, James.
I agree.
Actually, I saw you tweet that yourself. Yeah. We did get away with one yesterday. I didn't think we played that well yesterday. We barely did anything well. Couldn't get into our passing rhythm. Didn't press well. Didn't get the rotations up high going. Our positional play wasn't working. I think our A game was just not working yesterday. There was a lack of intensity about the team. I think we were out-pressed by Leeds, particularly in the second half. And in the end, we had to dig in to get a result. And I didn't think in the end it was our resilience that got us over the line, although people were saying, Arteta was saying it was a resilient performance. I think it was more a case of the fact that Leeds were just wasteful.
I completely not agree with you. Resilience for me is lots of blocks, of which there were some. Lots of blocks, lots of digging in, compact space, limiting a team to chances by sheer defending and chasing everything. And this wasn't that. This was actually being second to almost every ball. And, Leeds blazing it over the bar and maybe certain decisions going our way or whatever. But I will always credit the team for their work rate, because I've seen Arsenal teams over the last 10, 15 years lose those kind of games because they're being dominated just as much, but they didn't work as hard. They didn't chase every ball. They weren't up for the fight. And whatever you say about Arsenal's performance on the ball, or even off it, the work ethic and the commitment was there. And I've never questioned that, when it comes to this team under Mikel Arteta, to be fair.
No, I think Arteta will argue that we've had 3 hard games in a week, James.
Yeah,
and I think there is an argument that if this had been last season, we would not have won 3 games in the way we've done over the last week. Let's look back. We beat a very strong Liverpool team last week, 3-2. We then had to go away to Norway on a Thursday night, and we won away 1-0. And then we've had to come back on the Sunday, having travelled back on the Friday, to play a Leeds team who are not in great form. This is not a great Leeds team, in my opinion. They've lost their best 2 players from last season. But they're still... You saw against Palace, they played well against Palace and lost. And they played well again on Sunday. I just thought they beat us in the way they pressed us from the start. I think they were very aggressive in the press. I think they pushed us back. They attacked in a 2-4-4. We had trouble coping with their overloads on the right-hand side, which we're going to talk about. And we just didn't get our A game going offensively. So overall, Arsenal will look back on this as a win. It was an undeserved win, but we lost at United when we didn't deserve to lose at United. So maybe that addresses the balance slightly.
Yeah, I completely agree. And there's a balance in the way we cover this as well. I want people to remember that. For anyone going, but we won. Yeah, but, so why are you being so negative? No, because we've got to call it as it is. And in that Man United game, we could easily have gone, but we failed the test and blah, blah. But we stood here and we said, no, we were the better team. We deserved to win. And you're right. It's kind of roles reversed in this situation. Let's look at the match stats. I mean, for what it's worth, I thought in the first half we were actually all right. And some of our combinations were working. But across the game, Leeds the better side. We did have more possession. Really surprised when I saw that. 53 to their 40%. We had 16 shots to their 9, 4 on target each, and their XG was 2.5 to our 0.8. But I'm going to let you take the lead here on the attacking zones.
Can I just say, before you talk about the attacking zones, that's the first time I can recall we've actually lost an XG this season. Yeah,
it is the first time.
And it was a massive loss in terms of XG, wasn't it? Now, if you look at the attacking zones which you're showing there, again, heavily weighted in favour of Leeds in final third entries, deep touches, zone 14 touches and field tilt. And even defensive numbers, again, Leeds do better than us in all those defensive numbers. The only real number we are better than them in is clearances. That showed you the fact that we were defending for our lives more than the fact that we were better defensively. So Leeds were better offensively and defensively in the game. Yeah, they were. Talk to me about field tilt, because I've got these numbers here. You talked about a 65% field tilt for Leeds to our 35% in this game, but you rightly pointed out the field tilt in the 3 games previous, Brentford, Tottenham and Liverpool, where we were in fact a lot better. Talk to me about that stat and what it's telling us. Well, what it's telling us in effect is that in this game we lost our total dominance. We couldn't maintain or even get any real pressure offensively and pin them back. Now, field tilt is a very interesting stat for me because it tells me how many passes and touches you have in the opposition final third. So it's almost like 100% percentage, and it's normally, you can see which side has the bigger field tilt percentage-wise in the game. That tells you which team is dominating and maintaining pressure. Now, in the 3 previous games I've noticed that we're showing here is against the Liverpool and Tottenham and Brentford. It was in our favour, massively so against Tottenham and Brentford. But look at the difference in this Leeds game. We only had a 35% of the field tilt, and it's massively in favour of Leeds in this game. And that shows you pretty much how this game went for Arsenal. We could not get into our passing rhythm. We could not maintain any pressure up high. There were reasons for that, which I'm going to talk about when we look at the on the tactical pad. But I just think offensively, we just did not create anything yesterday, and as a result of that, it's reflected in the field tilt.
Let's have a little look at the tactical pad then. These are the 2 starting 11s. Jesus starts. We're going to talk about him a little bit later because there were question marks over whether he'd be fit to start, but he did play. And they went for a 4-2-3-1, and Harrison, who I'm used to seeing out on the left-hand side doing damage, was actually playing more in the 10. Break down how this kind of looked from a Leeds perspective as well.
Yeah, I think the Leeds pushed us back, really built up in a 2-4-4. I think where Leeds really gave us a lot of problems in this game was in the fact that they were overloading on our right-hand side. So they had their 2 number 9s, Rodrigo in the first half, and Bamford were obviously trying to build the play or link the play. Now, Harrison, who was playing at 10, I think was quite cleverly sometimes drifting out to this right-hand side where Tomiyasu is. And they had both their wide players then switching over to the other side of the pitch. So you had Aronson and Sinistera, yeah. So what they were doing, they were creating overloads on that right-hand side. That stopped Ben White getting forward where he likes to normally invert. Tomiyasu was inverting on the left-hand side, but we were building up in a more of a 3-2-5 when we had the chance to. But I think the issue we had throughout this game was the fact that they were overloaded on our right-hand side, and we didn't deal with that at all. We just did not deal with that at all during the game, James.
Yeah, and then they brought on, and we've got him here on the subs bench, they brought on Bamford, took off Rodrigo at half-time, and yeah, Bamford hanging more out to the right. We saw Aronson then, cause trouble out on the left-hand side. Somerville came on as well for Leeds. But you're right, they were just kind of winning. They were just winning the duels. They were just overloading. It felt like we always had a man less.
Yeah, they were winning the duels in midfield. They were far more intense than us and winning the midfield battle, but then causing problems up high with overloads, particularly on our right-hand side. We just did not deal with that all game. Even in the first half, they showed their intent early with a couple of shots early on from that side. And I just thought Ben White had a very difficult afternoon, so much so that he was hooked and Tomiyasu went over onto the right-hand side in the second half. But once again, we still didn't deal with it well enough. Tomiyasu struggled just as much as Ben White did on that right-hand side. So I thought defensively, that was the issue. I just think they were more intense than us. They pressed us better through midfield. They won the ball, got the ball up high. They were in this sort of like 2-4-4 offensive build-up shape, which we didn't deal with well enough.
Yeah, let's talk about the goal we did get though, because for all that, we were actually 1-0 up at half-time. And guys, we really mentioned all the kind of chaos before, from the delay to the game and all that. But Arsenal, it took them about, from kickoff, which was at 2 p.m, it probably wasn't till about 3 p.m that we actually started to see Arsenal at their best, because 40-minute delay, and then 20 minutes into the game do we start to see Arsenal playing. Now, I wanted to talk about this goal because I think people will just kind of brush it over as a Rodrigo mistake, but I like to notice patterns that I think are indicative of a side that are developing a killer instinct, that are able to show, actually, we've got something about us here and we're going to punish you for your mistakes. Now, this ball here, we'll play it through once. Let's play it through once at normal speed. Rodrigo, it's a poor ball. Saka wins the header. Odegaard, and then slips it into Saka, who scores. Now, there's a couple of things in this goal I really like. A, this is why we press. This is why we talk about high pressure, because in this moment here, Gabriel is going to Rodrigo to engage. The easiest thing when that ball comes out is to, you're not desperate to win it off Rodrigo in that situation. He's kind of in the middle of the pitch. He's off towards the right. But when you press and Gabriel leaves the centre-back position to come all the way across and maintain that press, you go man for man, you can force these kind of errors. So we've got it down to half speed. So he goes to Rodrigo, forces Rodrigo to make a decision. It's a poor decision. But at this point, where Saka's won the header, Odegaard's come across to help him. And then again, it's this pass here into, let's see if I can just take it here. Yeah, let's draw the line. It's this pass here into that space that he's basically putting it on a plate for him exactly like we did with Gabriel Martinelli last week. And that, again, makes me so happy because we talk about developing that killer instinct. And then he threads it through to Saka. And then Saka's a lovely finish into the roof of the net. I mean, it's impossible for any goalkeeper. And I think Meslier is about 6'5".
Yeah.
So, he's not short. And he's fired it into the roof of the net. And again, Odegaard's put it on a plate for him, just like we saw last week with the Martinelli goal. And again, we'll play it through and enjoy this goal against Liverpool last week one more time. Because again, we talked about how he could go wide to Martinelli, but he slips it through. And Martinelli, he knows what he's got to do. It's about firing into the back of the net. Yeah,
I thought Odegaard had a reasonably good first half. I thought
we did have a good first half.
And I thought we targeted their left-hand side. They've got a fullback there, Struijk, who's not a recognised left fullback. So I thought with the way Leeds play, very narrow, we were looking to get the ball, isolate him one-on-one with Saka a lot. That was our best movements in the first half, down there, left-hand side, our right-hand side. Odegaard was coming short a lot of the time to build up the play. Leeds was stopping the pass going into Thomas Partey a lot, so Jesus was having to come deep a lot in build-up. So we did create those sort of situations, one or two good situations on the right-hand side. Jesus had an opportunity early on that from that right-hand side. I thought the problem we had yesterday offensively was it's almost like we had no real creativity central. Gabriel Jesus wasn't quite at it yesterday, although he was dropping deep to link the play and maybe try and get an overload against their midfield two of Roca and Adams. I didn't think centrally we created enough. I thought one of the problems we had yesterday, I think, is Tomiyasu. Tomiyasu, who was really good last week against Liverpool, stopping Salah, doesn't really offer that overlapping option up high, which enables Martinelli to come central and join Jesus through the middle. As a result of that, a lot of the time, Martinelli wasn't able to sort of like make those sort of runs he normally likes to make, and that enables Jesus to sort of like move slightly to the right as well. So we didn't have anything centrally yesterday to really worry Leeds. The only real attacking instinct we had first half was down their left-hand side. And even then, the goal came from an error from them. But as you say, Odegaard, a pinpoint pass and a brilliant finish from Saka.
Yep, agreed. That is now 28 goals and 33 assists in 144 games for Arsenal for Bukayo Saka. What's he, 21 years old? I think he just turned 21. Unbelievable start to his Arsenal career.
Yeah, he is. 4 goals in the last 3 games. He got 11 in the whole of last season. So he's now really coming into his own now, and he's getting better and better every week. I can remember a few weeks ago we were talking about whether he'd had a good start to the season or not, and since then he's really kicked on, hasn't he?
Yeah, he really, really has. He probably heard some of those criticisms, and from
it wasn't criticism.
No, but probably heard, how fans felt about his performances, and he's the kind of guy, I think, I don't know him personally, I wish I did, who's probably like, okay, well, let me show you what I'm about. And he kind of always rises to that challenge, whether it be
You made a great point last week, James, about his character.
Yeah.
Last week he stepped up in that Liverpool game under pressure of the penalty and scored 2 goals in that game. He showed the willingness to get on the end of the attack at the end of the first half to put us back in front. He's literally sort of like driving the team forward on that right-hand side at the moment. And I think that, his numbers now are reflecting a player banging form.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about Gabriel Magalhaes, because I wouldn't say I was getting heat, but I was getting some comments. Dan and I were on the full-time live yesterday. People saying, Gabriel's really good, what are you talking about? And I think it's because we were fixating a little bit on some of those incidences at the end of the game, and the Bamford, was the goal disallowed or rightly disallowed and all that. So I'm going to talk about the penalty, the decisions, the refereeing stuff at the end. I want to focus on Gabriel's actual performance. And you sent me these numbers here, 100% of his aerial duels won, 90% pass accuracy, 4 clearances and 4 blocks, and 3 tackles and 3 interceptions. He really did put his body on the line. What did you make of his performance?
I thought he defended really well yesterday.
Yeah.
Some really key blocks. And I thought, he's taken a bit of criticism this season because I think he's been rash at times. He's made a few mistakes. But we're going to show a set of numbers here that you're going to get up in a minute against William Saliba, who we've been lauding all season. He's actually quite good in numbers defensively, isn't he?
Yeah.
And I thought yesterday he defended really well. He got lucky at the end, James. He could easily have been sent off for kicking out.
I think we've got to talk about that in a bit,
But I think I'd like to see him eradicate that from his game, that little bit of petulance where he loses it occasionally. But overall, I just think defensively this year, in his defensive numbers, in winning his duels, and they both won their duels yesterday, him and Saliba. Saliba didn't have his greatest game, but him and Gabriel won something like 15 out of 16 of their duels yesterday. So defensively, he still defended really well yesterday, and he was under the pump in that second half when Leeds were really coming at us.
So these numbers come on Twitter from AkshayKopkar10, that's his @AkshayKopkar10, and goes by the name Mick Teta. So that's where we've got the numbers from. I think they come via Opta, but here they are. Gabriel with 3 fouls conceded to William Saliba's 8, 28 ground duels to 24, 8 ground duels lost to 12, 24 clearances to 29, 7 interceptions to 6, 10 blocks to 2, 1 yellow card for Saliba, and 12 fouls 1 to 3. I think for a lot of those key stats like clearances, ground duels 1, interceptions, there's actually not that much in it.
No.
But the point is that Gabriel comes out on top in a lot of these things, and this is nothing on William Saliba, because you and me both and the rest of the Arsenal fan base have talked about how immense he has been this whole season. But it's more the way Gabriel's talked about compared to William Saliba, and he just deserves more credit for his performances. I was live on the 5 p.m. show on Monday last week, and I was having real arguments in the comment section about Gabriel and saying, listen, this guy, okay, he's had mistakes, and we're going to talk about that in a sec, but he's been playing well still.
He has, and those defensive numbers reflect the fact that he has been defending really well this season. He's made the odd error. And we were talking about it before we did the show today. He's made the odd error here and there. I think Saliba, he's judged against Saliba. Saliba almost looks more composed than him. And maybe that counts against him slightly. The way Saliba sort of like is unruffled, the way he is able to sort of like build play. And I think he's taken a lot of the plaudits because he's coming. We've seen a defender we haven't seen before. But I think we forget that last year Gabriel was one of our better defenders, and I still think, mistakes aside, he's been defending well this year, and those numbers reflect that, James. Overall this season, in those 900 minutes play, there's not too much difference between them defensively in their numbers.
Well, let's talk about Aaron Ramsdale's numbers as well, because, I mean, for me, he was man of the match, mainly because of how involved he got to help put out the fires. And for me, it's not just about how much you get involved. It's knowing when to not get involved. If the punch isn't there, you don't go for it. If the high claim isn't there, you don't go for it. If the ball's being in the middle of the area, don't get involved if your defenders are there. I think he picked his moments brilliantly when he came round and took one, in a painful area, but then was scrambling to get the ball back after. He knew to deal with that situation and come off his line at the right time. 4 saves, 3 punches. Pass percentage completion of 64% and 2 clearances. I thought Ramsdale was terrific.
Yeah, man of the match yesterday, without a doubt. I think he made a brilliant early save actually in the first half when he got down low to push one away. His kicking wasn't that great yesterday, only 64% accuracy, but overall I think the numbers there reflect a very good performance, and he saved us on 2 or 3 occasions in that game yesterday. People forget that, particularly one-on-one with Bamford, and I think the penalty that Bamford, had that been going in the corner, I think he would have saved it. I thought he had a really good game yesterday and back to his best. Yeah,
I completely agree. Another player I thought was terrific, and I don't have his numbers though, was just Granit Xhaka. And I was waxing lyrical about him yesterday on the full-time show, and the reason is because I felt when things were getting tough and we needed a little bit of composure on the pitch, his quick feet, I never thought I'd talk about Granit Xhaka when it comes to quick feet, but he was showing that quick feet, getting out of tight spaces when he had to. When he had the ball, there was one point where he got the ball and his back was to Martinelli, and you thought, he's not going to know he's there. But he just swiveled and pinged it out with his right foot. And I just thought all the best things we did throughout that game came from him. And then when it got a little bit heated and there were moments, he was the one to fight for his club and fight for his team to get the decision, but then turn to the players after and be like, what's going on? Particularly Gabriel Magalhaes was one of those moments at the end. I just felt he performed like a captain, because it's easy to be very good on the ball and have this resurgence in form when, as we mentioned, every other performance has been absolutely brilliant. But when you're doing it at a time where Arsenal aren't performing well and he still stands above the crowd, that's when I can really feel like we are getting a completely a level from Granit Xhaka I've never seen. He might take exception to that. He might think, hold on, I've always been this good. You're only just giving me the plaudits. I disagree. I think he has been good really since Arteta arrived. But I just think we're seeing a completely new level from him.
He might not have the armband, but he's almost like the captain on
the
pitch. And I thought, yesterday he was the one keeping us together in difficult moments. And you are quite right. I thought he had a really good, steadying performance yesterday. he's good every week now.
Yeah.
Whether offensively or defensively, and he was good again yesterday.
Yeah, pressing so hard, I couldn't believe his work rate. It's phenomenal. Another player I've got to talk about, but not in the most complimentary terms. And listen, I sometimes feel you need to give this context. We love Gabriel Jesus, and we're also very aware that at a point it didn't look like he might play, and that I think he took quite a few knocks actually in the Liverpool game. Obviously, he didn't travel with the squad to Bodo Glimt, so he might not have been at his absolute best in terms of feeling his absolute best. His performance certainly wasn't his best this season. I'd go as far as to say it's his worst. But he was excellent. He's been excellent all season. And in this game, I think he had some moments where he still reminded us. You think when he wriggled around a few players, his dribbling was still good at times, and the work rate you can never fault. But if you look at his season average here of his stats, compared to his stats versus Leeds, 52 touches he averages per game in the season. It was 42 touches against Leeds. 27 passes, his season average per game, down to 20, 3 shots per game to 1, and 2 successful dribbles down to 1 in the Leeds game. All his numbers dropped, and it just wasn't surprising. But the point I'm trying to make is not to dig him out, it's actually to talk about how important he is and how vital he's become to this Arsenal team, and how much we love him and how much we rate him and how much we talk about, if we lose Jesus, we might struggle, because you can see that when he's not at his very best, Arsenal just lack that little bit more cutting edge. Yes, Odegaard and Saka delivered it on this occasion, brilliant. But we weren't creating a plethora of chances, and really he should put his away as well.
He wasn't as lively yesterday as what he has been this season, and you saw the drop-off yesterday as reflected in those numbers. We've known all week he's been struggling with an injury, James.
Sure.
And there was touch and go, I think, where he would have played yesterday. I think he did some good work in that he dropped into midfield to try and get some overloads in our build-up play. But he wasn't quite as sharp as what he normally is. And I think probably because he's coming back from that injury. But it just shows the level he's been this season that we're talking like this about him. And I still think he's a quality player, and all quality players have games where they're not quite at it as much. And I think there was excuse for that yesterday. I think he was probably nursing an injury, and to be fair, he came back into the team probably with that injury because he's an important part of the team. But you are right. I mean, yesterday it wasn't just him. I think the whole team weren't at it yesterday. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to criticise him too much. He's been absolutely brilliant, electric this season. And one of the reasons why we are as good as we are offensively. Yeah,
I completely agree. Love you, Gabriel Jesus. But listen, it was just we see how important he is. That's the point we're making. Okay, let's round up with the decisions. Some refereeing decisions and the roundup stats. Starting with the refereeing decisions. Bamford's disallowed goal. Did we get lucky?
Probably.
I think we did.
I always look at it sometimes, James. If that was an Arsenal player, would I be happy if that had been given or not given? If that had been Jesus turning in the box and scoring and that being chalked off, I would have been disappointed. I thought it was a slight foul, but not enough to be a foul. Maybe that's just my opinion. Some people might think differently. I think we definitely got lucky there.
Yeah, I think so too. The Leeds penalty that was given was offside. How do you feel about this whole phase of play? It was a new phase. For me, it's all part of the same attacking move. Arsenal are holding a line to play him offside. They don't give it, so they're still adjusting their movement to deal with that whole part of the attack.
Well, the right back's offside. I just can't see how the linesman doesn't see that. So, although it's a clear handball by Saliba and a penalty given for the handball, rightly given for the handball, if the linesman had got the decision right in the first place, we wouldn't even be talking about whether it was a penalty or not, would we? Yeah. For me, it was offside in the build-up, but I can't argue about the fact that once they've let that go and it's gone into the box, it's clearly
penalty. Wasn't great from Saliba. I mean, I can't remember, but it looked like
he struggled with Bamford in that second half.
I mean,
Bamford came on and gave them real energy.
Yeah.
He really did struggle with Bamford's presence, and he turned him quite a lot in that game. Bamford, as good as he was in shaping Leeds' recovery in the second half, was ironically the wasteful player who cost them. So, Saliba didn't have his finest performance yesterday. Again, like Jesus, he's been so outstanding this season, you can almost forgive him for not being at the level every single game. But I thought, just coming back to the question, penalty for the handball, but we shouldn't have been talking about whether that was a penalty.
Penalty and red card that was then overturned.
Well, first of all, the initial actions from Bamford. Bamford's the one who pushes Gabriel to the ground. Gabriel then unwisely kicks out, and on another day...
He does he? I mean, he definitely lifts his leg higher than he needs to.
Yeah, on another day, he would have been sent off for that. Yeah. So it was no penalty for me. Could have been a red card.
I think that's the
point.
Could have been.
He got lucky. He got lucky there.
I think people are seeing them as kind of, well, it's all one and the same. If it's a penalty, if it's a red card, but if you're overturning it, then neither can stand. I disagree. I think you can say it's not a foul, it's not a penalty. He doesn't make contact with Bamford. He's falling. It's an off-the-ball incident. You can make lots of cases why it's not a penalty. Not least because Bamford actually ran into Gabriel first. But you can also say that it's not a penalty, but there's a high leg. You don't fall like that. No one falls, and then your left leg just kind of comes up like that.
No, he kicked out at him, didn't he?
I think he definitely wanted to leave his leg high. And he actually did well to make it not look so obvious, but I think to me, his leg was high, and that could have been a red card.
They got it right in the fact that it wasn't a penalty, and it's debatable whether it's a red card. I've seen those given.
I've seen them given.
So again, I think we on this show, we try to be fair. In the past, we've always criticised referees, if we feel Arsenal have been harshly done by. I thought yesterday we got slightly the better of the decisions than the 50-50 decisions yesterday.
I completely agree. And this is why a lot of the discussion yesterday, and I saw online around Gabriel, was, had that negative kind of flavour to it. And people were saying, what? But he was brilliant. I just want to say how I feel about it. And everyone's going to feel differently. But for me, Gabriel was good yesterday. In fact, he was very good yesterday. But that moment, for me, was it was a lapse of concentration. It was a poor moment to lift your leg in that way. Now, if it wasn't intentional, fine, I'll take all that back. But it looked a little intentional to me. And you risk all of it just kind of being thrown away, or at least, if they don't give a penalty, not being available for the next game, because of that one moment that was so completely and utterly unnecessary. And when you add it to the error against Man United, the error against Fulham, the error against Tottenham with the penalty, the not quite missing the ball against Liverpool, but then I don't think Saliba's brilliant on that goal either. When you couple all these things, we can sit here and say he's having a very, very good season, he's having a very good season, but he's making errors for me, and that's why I think we highlight it. That's all. Love him to bits, but
no, I was just going to make the point that had he been sent off yesterday, we'd have lost him for 3 games.
So, of course,
it would have been 3 games.
Straight red,
So, that would have. Just imagine how that would have looked yesterday had the referee given that penalty. He'd been sent off. They'd equalised, got a 1-1. We would have lost 2 points and him for the next 3 games. Yeah. So that was a massive part of the game yesterday, and I think it's something that he needs to sort of like eradicate from his game. This sort of like where he loses his composure sometimes in those sort of situations. And William Saliba is always very calm and composed, isn't he? And that's why people are rightly lauding the way Saliba has been this season. Gabriel has been brilliant defensively in winning his duels. He's still a great defender. He's just got to cut out those little errors and cut out that little bit of impetuousness that we've seen. We've seen it once or twice from him over the last year. Remember, he's been sent off a couple of times in his Arsenal career. Where
Man City,
for example. So this is something he needs to look at. But he still is, for all the points you make, a great defender. Yeah,
I agree. We love him to bits. And I wouldn't be making any changes to the starting lineup if people are thinking about that. I think you keep letting him play through the good bits, and I'm sure that those little moments will disappear. Love him to bits. Roundup stats.
Right, the closing stats for this week, James. Arsenal have now won 11 and lost none of their last 13 matches against Leeds in all competitions. For the first time in their 136-year history, Arsenal have now won 9 of their first 10 opening games of a top-flight season. The current record is played 10, won 9, lost 1, goals scored 24, goals conceded 10, clean sheets 4, points 27. The other teams who have won 9 of their opening 10 games in the Premier League are Newcastle in 1995-96, Chelsea in 2005-06, Manchester City in 2011-12, Manchester City again in 2017-18 and Liverpool in 2019-20. Only one of those teams has failed to go on and win the league. That's Newcastle, Chelsea, Man City and Liverpool. Which team would that be? Newcastle in 95-96. It was Keegan's famous season, wasn't it, when he had his meltdown against Ferguson. Arsenal have now achieved 4 clean sheets in their first 5 away games of this season's Premier League. So as much as we're criticising the team for maybe not being at it yesterday, maybe struggling defensively yesterday, it's still a record to be proud of. 4 clean sheets in their first 5 away games. A bit of perspective on how far Arsenal have come this year. It took them until December the 27th last season to reach 27 points in the league. They have done it 2 months and 7 games fewer this season. Bukayo Saka is now the first player to be involved in 50 goals for Arsenal under Mikel Arteta in all competitions, scoring 26 and assisting in 24. He has also scored 4 goals in his last 3 games in all competitions. And finally, James, happy Invincible Day. With Man City losing at Liverpool yesterday, they became the last team in the Premier League to lose a game this season, meaning Arsenal remain the only top flight club to go through an entire season unbeaten. That record of 126, drawn 12. And unlikely that any club will match their achievement of a whole campaign unbeaten. So a good day for Arsenal yesterday, despite the poor performance. On Invincible Day, they extended their lead at the top of the Premier League, James, to 4 points.
And that's what we're going to end on. 4 points clear at the top of the Premier League, guys. And the fact that we're talking about that rather than how many points clear we are a 5th or whatever shows how slowly the aspirations and the belief is changing for this season. And it's because of a string of great performances. The signings make a difference, and everyone as well from last season raising it, including Mikel Arteta. So well done to the team. Really something to be proud of. 9 wins out of 10. And they say after 10 games, you start to look at the table properly and start to really pay attention to where everyone is. So let's hope Arsenal can build on this when they play Southampton on the weekend. We will be there on Monday to discuss it all. Hopefully, another Arsenal win. Every time I've said that, they've delivered. Let's hope they do that again. It's a big one, Southampton, because we lost their last season. Can they respond? Graham, a big thanks as always.
Thank you, James.
Well done, Arsenal. 4 points clear.